Good morning, everyone. Is everyone awake? Oh, well, if you're not awake, raise your hand. It's a trick question, by the way. All right. Oh, okay. It's not just me. Well, welcome to the last day of Devox UK. I hope you've had a fulfilling conference so far. Many of you have been here for the last several days, and I've been lucky enough to meet many of you. I still see some new faces in the room, so hopefully we'll get a chance to connect maybe after this session. My name is Nikolai Parlog. You can see the resemblance. Um, This talk is actually from my colleague on the Java DevRel team, who unfortunately could not be here with us today. So what did I do? I raised my hand and said, hey, no problem, Nikolai. I will try to do your talk. But as we know, we're all unique, and I cannot be Nikolai. So what I've done is I've reinterpreted his talk through the lens of my perspective. It will cover some of the same things that Nikolai was intending to, foundationally speaking, but I'm going to give it my own spin. But for comparisons, if you want to hear his talk, he's done a version of this before. You're welcome to take a screenshot, go to the URL, rewatch his talk to see who does this talk better. So the premise of his talk is really trying to understand how we on the Java team go from taking an idea about a new feature and making it available for you as developers to utilize in your workspace, in your project, in your application. And so thematically, I'm going to try and tell that same story, but through my experience and my responsibilities on the Java team. So I'm calling this Java First, Java Always, because Java will exist for the next 30 years, which, by the way, who knows what anniversary of Java is coming up next year? And my coworkers are not allowed to answer the question. Yes, 30 years. 30 years of Java. So quick show of hands if you've been using Java for at least 5 years? Yeah? Yeah. Everyone should have their hand up. 10 years? Yeah. Expected that. 20 years? Yeah. There's a former coworker of mine back in the room there that I haven't seen in almost 15 years, which is so endearing to see someone come and attend my talk. How about 25 years? Besides me. Okay. I guess that shows that I'm old, but I'm not outdated. What versions of Java are you using in production? Let's start with Java 8. Are you using Java 8 in production? Shame on you. Java 17? Java 21? Java 22 in production. My coworkers can't raise their hand. All right. Let me go backwards the other way. Java 7? Java 6? Java 5? Good. No one should have their hands up. So what I'm going to try and do is explain a framework of how we develop Java. And fundamentally, the state of Java is rooted in principles that were established before I even joined the team at Oracle. One thing you'll notice is some really powerful stats here. You as Java developers should know you've made a great career choice and investment in a language and a platform that's not just driving your career today, but for the next 25 years. And it's our responsibility at Oracle to ensure the language remains modern and current to address the challenges that we're facing as developers in terms of new use cases, new best practices, regardless of the industry that you're in. But where does that come from? It comes from three main vectors, three main principles, three main virtues. And that first one is trust. Trust that we're going to commit to deliver transparently the features and the functionality in both the language and the platform. And I'll get into a little bit of what that transparency means. Innovation. Now, let's be honest, there was several years where the innovation pipeline wasn't as robust as it is today. There was a lot of technical debt we on the Java team had to pay down because the market shifted. The way Java was developed in the early 90s, mid 90s, early 2000s was in a development environment that enterprises were trying to build that are different today, fundamentally different. We're moving at a faster rate. You're all expected to push out your innovation much faster. And we needed to keep up with that. We needed to change how we approached our builds, how we approached our design models, how we developed our transparency where you could participate in that journey. And I'll talk a little bit about that participation layer a little bit later. And then lastly, predictability. Again, going back to the previous challenge in terms of innovation not necessarily being there in the early years, or I should say the mid years, we also had a challenge with predictability. And we've tried to change that such that we are constantly predictable in how we release Java. As you know, we've moved to a 6-month release model, which I will also cover, which guarantees you as developers, we all love predictability. Every March, every September, we have a release of Java. And that takes a lot of the pressure off of you as developers because you're no longer wondering, when is the next version coming out? We faced a time when Java, our commitment used to be, we will deliver Java every 2 years. And oftentimes we were not able to do that. And why weren't we able to do that? We weren't able to do that because we would feature bind a specific feature to a release. And you as developers and engineers know, when you make a commitment like that, that's a very large promise. We start encountering engineering issues, quality testing issues, and that just delayed the release because we had 1 or 2 features that were tied to that specific release. Independent of all of the other features that might have been done in the pipeline, we could never deliver that to you because you had 1 or 2 outstanding features that were not done, and that slowed down your innovation. And so we had to fundamentally change and think about what we work on. Now, there's some areas that are mission critical to us here on the Java team that we are constantly investing in and monitoring. One is the evolving use cases. Now, let's face it, we're not all in the same industry. We're not in the same vertical. You might be in fintech or finance or aerospace or edu or e-retail or commerce. All of you have unique use cases, and we have to account for all of that, finding what are the common problems, the common challenges, and the common opportunities to service as large a market of developers as possible. And that's very hard. There's close to, I think, between 12, 14 million Java developers on the planet. That's rather huge. We can't optimize Java for just one person or just one use case. Oftentimes we will hear, why doesn't Java do this 100% well compared to other competitive languages? The goal isn't to be the best in one thing. It's meant to be great in many things. A general purpose language that can solve a collection of issues and challenges and opportunities. The second is hardware architecture. Let's face it, that's also moving extremely fast. And so we have to work with hardware vendors to find out how they are optimizing their innovation and align our pipeline of features that can optimize against that hardware configuration. Chipsets. So nary a day goes by where we are not having calls with companies like AMD and NVIDIA and other SoCs, system-on-chip manufacturers, to understand how are GPUs and CPUs also changing. Because let's face it, your computer, it really doesn't have any value. If there's anyone in hardware here, I don't mean to insult you. But the hardware doesn't have value until there's applications flowing on it. And so we need to ensure there's alignment between the language and the platform with new CPUs. And then lastly, paradigms. It's constantly shifting. We're now moving to a world where there's automated testing and build pipelines and automated deployment and patching. How does the language help you through that? Those are things that we have to consider as we design Java to make it much easier. So you're doing less of that underlying plumbing to get your infrastructure up and functioning and being stable. We also have this dichotomy, and if any of you had a chance to come to my talk yesterday, there's 2 things we have to keep in balance, and it's very tough. Just like the scales of justice, the scales of development is very hard to keep in balance. You as developers are always on the cutting edge. What is that new innovation that I can immediately start using? Whereas many enterprises, whether you're small, medium, or large, They like stability. They like minimal change. Things in production, you don't want to have to constantly edit and update that. If it's working, it's working, hands off. That's a cost benefit for your company. And so that clashes, that creates friction. And we have to ensure that as we're pushing out new features and new innovation for you, we're also keeping in mind those architects and those decision makers who like things stable. And so we're trying to keep that in balance. We call that tip to tail. Tip is the edge where there's innovation, the tail where there's long sustaining stability with a specific release of Java. Now, these are very large concepts and strategies that then materialize into an actual engineering schedule of functionality that we then deliver. And so what do we do? Where does that transparency happen? I know most of you might know about OpenJDK, but I'm going to just cover that just briefly. That is our place for innovation. That's literally where we do all of our development on the Java team. It's open. For anyone who thinks we have a card up our sleeve or it's done by some magic, there is no magic. There's nothing hidden. The project is meant to be transparent so you as developers can be empowered with what we're doing. So you can see the types of decisions that we're making. You can look at our code check-ins. You can read our mailing lists to understand what decisions we've made, or more importantly, why we didn't do something. It's there for you. It's not about just downloading the next JDK and then using it in production in anger. You also have to keep yourself educated in terms of that evolution. And the more you know about where a specific feature started, the better you can then utilize that when it becomes generally available in a specific release. So education isn't just us giving you information, you also have to consume it. And this is a great way for you to keep up to date with progress on any specific feature or project that we have in development. So I would encourage you, if you're not already participating in OpenJDK, please, I beg of you, go there, look at a specific project that meets your needs, sign up for the mailing list, and at a bare minimum, keep up to date with the updates that we give. Now, we also knew in the past that we also developed features in rather large sets, which is what took a lot of time. And so what we tried to do is streamline that. We streamline that down into various projects, and within each project births a series of features, and a few of them you see here, which there are many other projects that are actively being developed in OpenJDK. And I'll just cover a few of them because it's important for you to know that it's not just one project in its entirety that will give value. It's the interoperability across all of these projects and the features from them that will give you productivity in your workplace. For me, the most compelling project, because when I started learning Java, unlike many of you who are probably formally trained as developers, is Amber. When I started learning Java, it was very heavy. It was very verbose, let's be honest. There was a lot of ceremony. It was rather complex. The concepts were very hard to understand. And we needed to streamline that down because at the end of the day, if you think about it, just take a step back. What you're working on today will have to evolve in the future. That may happen from you. That might happen from a colleague. That may happen after you leave. And so reading, writing, and maintaining code becomes much more simpler if the syntax of the language is more approachable. And so Amber, since its inauguration, has birthed a collection of features that can simplify the programming syntax of Java. Now, this entire week, I've heard two letters, the acronym AI, 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 AI. What is Java doing for AI? Well, we're not directly doing anything specific for Java to address AI, but what we're trying to do is understand the fundamental problems of developing AI-type applications. And the number one issue we see is the fact that a lot of AI is done with a lot of native libraries written in C, and we want that to interoperate with Java, and that's what, Project Panama is invested in. So another way to also look at the market, it's shifting. We want to ensure that the features that come out of OpenJDK are addressing some of those new use cases that are out in our industry. And then the last project I just want to talk about is ZGC. Pause times on your application can be mission critical It can slow you down. It can cost tens of millions of dollars. And so ZGC allows you to help address terabytes heaps with very minimal millisecond pause times, so you're not impacted by any slowdown in your application. And so I would ask that you go look at some of these projects and understand these all interoperate together, and collectively, as you take these features, it's going to make you a much more productive developer in the type of application that you're building. Which, by the way, a lot of times we will get the question, why isn't Java the leader in many spaces? And the reality is, as we go back to the size of our ecosystem with tens of millions of developers, tens of thousands of customers, you each have your own unique use cases. To account for all of that, we have to be thoughtful. We can't move fast and break things. We have to be thoughtful in our development. So we have that notion of last leader advantage. We take a look at what the industry is doing. We look at what other languages are doing, and we try to embrace best practices to then thoughtfully evolve how we put those features and those design patterns into the structure of Java as we develop it. Going back to the 6-month release model, here's the predictability I was talking about. Now, here you can kind of see the past. In red is what we did with Java 8 and Java 9. Like I said, our original commitment used to be 2 years with every release. That oftentimes didn't happen. In fact, the time between 8 and 9 was a little over 3 years. And that was because, again, we had certain features that were binded with a specific release that slowed down our ability to push out that specific release. The other issue is when you have that amount of time gap, you have this accumulation of features that are getting developed and finished that once the release becomes available, it becomes very intrusive to try and to take account for all of those features to use in the workplace. Nary a day or a week goes by where we're not talking with a customer who might still already be on Java 8 or even Java 11, and they will sit there going, we're still trying to understand how to use all those features from 8 and 9. We haven't caught up yet. The mass was too high, and so that creates shock on the system. We were trying to reduce the learning curve because when you have that mass of features, there's just inherent time that it takes to understand how to utilize all of those features in your business. And so by shifting to a 6-month release model, what we did was reduce the latency of accessing new releases of Java. But as you'll notice, we didn't maintain the throughput. So with every subsequent release, every 6 months, it's not about getting 90 new features or 100 new features. We've broken them down into smaller projects, and with a smaller change set, you have the ability then to learn those features much more quickly to then adopt them into your enterprise. But if you notice something, start taking the accumulation of the features that we release every 6 months. If you add up a three-year horizon of every 6-month release, the totality of the features that we've delivered is very similar to when we had that 2-year guarantee or tried commitment of releases on Java. We also know many of you work in enterprises where commercial support is important. We designate those as LTS. Please understand that LTS is an enterprise support model, has nothing to do with the quality of the release. Every version of Java is of the same quality as of the previous one. There is no difference in terms of the quality. We just designate specific ones, here outlined Java 11, Java 17, and last year in September with Java 21. Those are long-term support releases, meaning long-term support commercially gives you performance, stability, and security updates. And that's it. You don't receive new features on that. So understand, if you want new features, continue to move along. If you choose to use an LTS, you get all the value of the previous releases in terms of the features. But if you want to experience the features that are coming out in future releases, you can simply just maintain and keep up with the 6-month release. And if you can't, guess what? The next release is just 6 months away. So it's not too much of a shock on the system for you as developers and for the enterprises that you work with. So just to kind of show you a little bit of just how much you get, if we look back at Java 21 in September, there was a great deal of value that came in 21. But if you look at Java 21, going all the way back to Java 17, the list grows a little bit longer. And then if you take it back all the way to Java 11, it's a rather large collection. So it just shows you, as you keep up, you're still getting all of the value from previous releases. That doesn't disappear. Just because you're on 21 doesn't mean you're not getting the value from 20 or 19 or 18. It's a cumulative process. And that's a very long list. If everyone wants to see this in a digested form, I'm happy to send you a summary of all of this. Transparency and participation. Like I said, we might know a lot about what we're doing, but we also know the history of Java in terms of its value comes from input and feedback from all of you. And so this is just a snapshot of all of the companies that participated in Java 22 in terms of filing bug fixes that allowed us to move the release forward. We don't do this in isolation. Yes, Oracle might be the largest contributor, or I should say the Java team at Oracle contributes the largest amount of fixes and updates and enhancements to every release, but we also partner with the community, with a various number of companies that you might recognize, but also more importantly is independent developers, people like you who participate in OpenJDK, who choose to take a contributory role to then evolve the language. And that's important because in our releases, as I said, every release is the same, which also gives us the opportunity to also put in features where we want your feedback directly. If you didn't realize it, with every 6 months release, we already have early access builds of the next release available. In fact, when Java 22 was shipping in March of this year, we already had early access builds of 23 that are now available that you can start using and testing to see what that might do in your environment so you can start to adjust and enhance your approach as we reach GA in September. Does anyone know the actual GA date without looking on your smartphone? September 19th. It's already been announced. Our release schedule is on OpenJDK. Again, we're taking out the guesswork for you, so you already know in advance, ahead of time, when the release is coming so you can prepare for it. What do we also do? Sometimes a feature is 100% done, it meets the specification required by the TCK, and it'll be ready in a specific release. But sometimes we also have features that we designate as preview. From our standpoint, it's fully specified. But we're still looking for a little bit of feedback to ensure it meets all of the necessary components that many developers need. And so preview features, by design, can't be used in anger. You can't access them until you turn a flag on, so you're not doing harm to your application. And then as you're welcome to use it, but we'd like to get your feedback. So when it does become generally available, it's met all of the quality criteria and the use case scenarios as great as possible that we've accounted for before we GA that feature. Again, in the previous model of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you just got all the features. It could be stable, it could be sometimes unstable, we'd have to patch them, but we never got your feedback. And so if we go back and look at Java 8, there were many features where after the fact, we were getting input in terms of, why didn't you design it to do X? And we didn't think of that. We didn't have a mechanism to take in your feedback. And so preview features, again, lets us to collect that input from you as the community. Another important dimension is, as great as it was, because I saw all the hands going up, 5 years of a Java programmer, 10 years, some were 15, some were almost at 20, very few at 25. But what we are the current state of the ecosystem. And what we need to understand is, how do we make Java valuable for the next 30 years? And so what we have to fundamentally do is ensure Java is evolving for that next generation of developers that are behind us. And so some of the things that we're doing is just simplifying the syntax. As we said, Project Amber is one of our major projects that are focused on this. In Java 22, we have JEP 463, which is in preview, but it's really trying to take out a lot of the ceremony out of the language. Again, for a new developer looking at Java, a lot of the concepts in the beginning are hard to understand. It doesn't quite make sense in terms of, why do I have to do something? And so how do I just write a simple hello world. And so in JEP 463, we're looking at just how that design can be addressed to simplify, to start out small and then start learning the concepts around Java, to start bringing in some of the more complex language constructs to address your application development. And so we're looking forward to seeing 463 evolve, but also introduce additional features that's going to simplify the language. And by the way, it's not only going to help a new developer, it's going to help all of us. It's going to make all of us more efficient in the code we write, going back to reading, writing, and maintaining. More efficient code lowers the cost, which means you're more productive. That benefits everyone. We're also looking at the tooling model. You know, I came from the world of NetBeans. I think there might be some NetBeans fans in the room. Yay, NetBeans. But we all choose our own IDEs, right? We've optimized to ensure that Java is a first-class citizen in NetBeans, in Eclipse. We now know there's a growing population of student developers, especially using VS Code. And so we now have a Java plugin for VS Code to account for this. And why is this important for us? This is important for us because we're developing the JDK out of the gate. And so we can actually introduce this in the beginning and make it much more accessible before the next release is possible. In fact, we already have Java 23 functionality in our VS Code plugin for Java. So another advantage in case you're a VS Code fan. And again, I'm not making any bet or decision as far as which is the best. The best tool is the one you find value in. Don't ever let anyone tell you that one IDE or one development type is better than another. We all have our choices. If you find value in it, embrace it. In fact, I'm going to say something a bit controversial. The same goes for languages. As much as I love Java, if there's another language that solves your needs, use it. Don't ever let anyone tell you you've made the wrong decision. The last thing we want to do is have language wars. It's a waste of time. We as developers in this room, most of us who are Java developers, are probably learning and using other languages in some fashion, maybe equally, maybe less. It's important that we have that multi-language capacity and understanding. Hopefully the microphones aren't recording me on that one. Again, paving the on-ramp. Another benefit, not just for new developers, but for you, is our Java playground. So we've developed a portal, which I'll get into a little bit later, called dev.java. But it's an online browser that allows you to experience the code related to new features. You can simply go to dev.java, launch the playground, select the type of feature that you're interested in, and generate the code to see what it looks like before you use it. Now, for students, this is highly productive because going back to understanding the syntax of Java, it can be rather complex, and seeing visually what something is doing is sometimes more of a learning experience than just reading about it. And so we're going to be evolving the Java playground over time, hopefully become much more robust. Maybe, Anna, do you think we'll plug this in somewhere? We'll have a plugin for the playground, maybe? I want to see it. All right. Enterprise value. Now, some of you might say, oh my God, here's where Shar is going to sell me on something. I'm not trying to sell you something. Use the version of Java from the vendor that you believe you're getting the greatest amount of value. But from an Oracle's perspective, we want to ensure enterprises are also getting that enterprise-grade quality that they're seeking. And so when we look at our commercial version of Java, it's because we understand the enterprise landscape is extremely complex, and we kind of look at it in three rather typical three states in the ecosystem. One is enterprises trying to make existing applications on-prem and trying to ensure that that can keep up with the innovation while at the same time staying stable. We also see enterprises that are moving applications on-prem into the cloud and having some sort of mixed environment of both on-prem and cloud. How do we account for that state of development? And of course, many companies, many of you probably work at them, where you're starting your development and your innovation purely in the cloud. How do we account for all of these three states in terms of version control management, in terms of security patching, in terms of updating, in terms of provisioning? That's rather complex. That goes beyond the scope of what Java can do. So we fundamentally have to add some level of enterprise value to customers that are seeking this type of support. It's not about just fixing a patch. It's about giving you enterprise grade value with a set of features. And what are some of those features? Well, first and foremost, we have Java Mission Control and Advanced Management Console, which allows you to take accountability of your Java estate in terms of what versions of Java is running in production. So you can then target how you want to update those specific versions on your timeline. We also ship GraalVM with every commercial release of Java. What's new with our commercial instance of Oracle JDK is we now offer support for third-party libraries and runtimes. Let's face it, it's not the issues that we face with Java, it's our dependency chain that oftentimes slows us down. And so we want to be able to afford our enterprise customers an ability to go into their architecture, take a look at it, and look at those third-party dependencies and help them through that migration to a newer version of Java based on those third-party dependencies. Or again, if they're using a different Java runtime. With the institutional knowledge of over now 29 years in-house, we believe we have the knowledge base possible in terms of addressing these solutions because we see it every day. So I'm not saying that you need to look at the Java SE subscription. I'm just saying it's a possibility in case your enterprise needs it. Okay, so I talked a little bit about our technical approach to developing Java, a little bit about enterprise value, but I also want to focus on ecosystem stewardship because this has been the lifeblood of what Java is. The technology itself isn't what makes Java powerful. What makes Java powerful is this room, the people at this conference. All of you have interesting positions, experiences, best practices that we collectively have to share. So as the stewards of Java, we need to fundamentally do three things. Ensure you have a roadmap and a platform and channels for improving your learning, regardless of your skill set, whether you're just starting off in Java, maybe you're a few years in, or you're highly experienced. We need to ensure we have a robust collection of learning information. We also have to provide a facility for you to share that common knowledge amongst each other. So we need a channel to deliver all of that. And then lastly, collaborating. We need to have a mechanism through various channels so you can participate with us in the evolution of Java. So I'm going to cover a little bit of that. So a little bit of this is from my presentation yesterday. So if this is a repeat, I apologize, but it's important to say that what made the Java ecosystem so important are foundational programs that were started even before I started on the Java team, which my first day, I still remember, December 8th of 2000. I can't believe I still remember that. I think in 10 years, I'll probably forget it as my gray matter oxidizes much more. But these are the programs that brought me into the community. These are the programs that help inspire me to become part of the Java ecosystem. Is anyone here, and it's okay if you're not, be brave, raise your hand if you are not associated with a Java user group. Just a few, just a few. All right. I can't tell you just how important a user group is in terms of advancing your Java knowledge. If it wasn't for the New York Java Special Interest Group in 1996, when I was just learning Java, I probably would not have, moved my career forward in the Java world. The fact that I got to meet at that time the experts of that era that inspired me to understand just how much Java could do, they helped me bootstrap my career in this industry. And all of you have that opportunity as well. We can garner greater knowledge from our peers, sometimes more from just physical content. And so the in-person experience is highly important. I know we live in a digital world. I know sometimes we're not able to always travel, but the fact that you have a user group local to you gives you at least an accessible in-person touch point to have the sharing of best practices and use cases amongst each other. Highly important. So which continent does not have a Java user group? Antarctica. Antarctica. So if any of you move to Antarctica, please let me know if you want to start a Java user group. I'll help you. But we have almost 400 Java user groups around the world. I would be very surprised if you cannot find a local Java user group near you. And if you need help starting one, that is literally what I do every day. We help the community try to reach their goals. So if you are interested in starting a Java user group, I'm here to help you. Java Champions. Java Champions is a very special program that I was able to launch with my peers back in 2005. And this program is meant to be a collection of independent developers who are experienced in Java that go around the world to inspire all of us to become better developers. There are 397 of them in the world. A few of them are in this room. I'm going to politely ask those Java champions in this room to raise their hand. And I just want to thank you for all you do for the Java community because it's important. Again, going back to peer learning, these champions are extremely helpful. They travel the world, they share knowledge online, and it's a great way for you to, again, get independent education beyond what we on the Java DevRel team develop. And if you're interested in becoming a Java champion, let us know. Let me know. I will partner you with an existing Java champion, and they can help sort of nurture you to understand what it takes to become one. Going back to learning, certifications are highly important these days. Just last year, we completed the 1 millionth official Java certification. Gentlemen in Japan achieved that. And so it becomes a marker for you with your existing employer, or if you're looking for future employment, that certification helps make you stand out. And so we continue to invest in our Java certification program that started at Sun, is now delivered through Oracle University. And it's a way, again, to give you a path to keep your Java skills sharp. Again, foundational programs, mission critical, that we have to continue to water. If we don't water these, the rest of the tree dies. So it's inherent that we continue to put investments in this. And again, as I said yesterday, we need to actually add more water to these programs. I'll admit it, we're a little bit in a drought, shall I say, in terms of what we're doing, and shame on us. We need to get better at this, and we are incrementally pouring more water into the roots. We also know, as developers, we all have our own modalities in terms of how we want to learn. And a lot of that learning is happening online. And so leaning back into the past in terms of what worked in terms of an online presence, some of you might have familiarity with java.sun.com. That was an extremely valuable single destination portal of learning information, community information, all things Java. And so what we've tried to do is replicate that again and continue to enhance it at dev.java. Should be a very easy URL for you to remember. But this is the place where we have all of our learning tutorials, touching different skill sets of developers, whether you're, again, just starting out, intermediate, or more experted. We want to ensure we have a robust catalog of our learning information. Inside.java is a direct result of the feedback from the community. One of the greatest issues we all see is we try to go to our browser of choice, type in a search term, and then we're just presented with hundreds of links of learning information. And how do I then sort of navigate that, especially if that learning content and information is coming from the Java team? So inside.java literally aggregates all of the writings and the videos that we as the Java team produce by author, by topic, by project, by feature, based on how you want to tag it in terms of the search, and allows that easy discovery. So it's a really good starting point. For example, if you wanted to learn about the entire evolvement and continuing involvement of Project Amber, you can simply click on the Amber tab and get all of the content that we on the Java team have produced on that specific project. And of course, YouTube, our official YouTube page. Thank you, Anna. Thank you for letting me use your picture. We have started to cultivate a rich set of short form and long form videos that you can then watch on your own time. And we're looking to actually expand that to also include learning content from the community. Shh, don't tell anyone. That's a side project. We're trying to do that as best we can. Again, no one's recording me, right? Community contributions. Touching upon the YouTube channel, we're also now publishing content from the ecosystem on dev.java. We want to have a mechanism to highlight the Java champions of the world. But we also want to highlight you. It's not about just if you consider yourself a luminary. I think all of you are luminaries. But you might have something important that you want to share that all of us as developers can benefit from. And we want to have a mechanism and a channel to do that. And so how do we do that? We actually have a project on GitHub we list the various topics of interest that we would like to publish on. You can then contribute your article. It'll go through a quality criteria. Once we have an agreement that it's met that quality criteria, we'll then publish it. And you probably recognize some of the authors that are already there. Venkat Subramaniam, who got a Lifetime Achievement Award in the Java community here at Devox during the opening keynote. Heinz Kabutz, who's one of the most vocal advocates of Java on the planet. Jean Boyarsky, who is highly integrated in Java learning. She helps actually give us feedback in terms of our Java certification program. She even publishes content in terms of how to prepare for that certification test. And of course, Kai Horstman, who has some very extensive publications of Java programming. But this is just a small collection, and we want to be able to feature many more authors, whether they're a luminary or from the broader ecosystem. So with that, I just want to first say thank you for your time. You're here on the last day. And with that, we have a little bit of time for questions, so I'm happy to take questions. Otherwise, coffee awaits you downstairs, I believe. Thank you. Oh, bookmark all these URLs, please. Yes, we have a question in the back.
Yes, thank you very much for your talk. It was really inspiring.
Thank you.
Do you feel sometimes a little bit pressure from Kotlin in terms of language design or features?
Do I feel pressure from other languages?
Mostly or mainly focused on Kotlin?
I see. Okay. Do I feel pressure? Yes. But what tempers that pressure? The fact that we have Brian Getz as our language architect, who is extremely smart and is extremely rational and makes extremely thoughtful decisions. So going back to how we look at the landscape, nary a day doesn't go by where we're watching the evolution of existing languages that are out there, especially the modern ones, to see what are they doing well and how can we take best practices from that and inherently bring that back into Java, ensuring we don't break historical investments. And that's the biggest challenge. So where my fear comes from is, are we sometimes moving too slow or have we moved too fast? And luckily with the guidance of someone like Brian Getz, he keeps that in balance. I think, again, choose a language of your choice. That's important. I think every language has a purpose and value. And that also keeps us competitive. We have to monitor, we have to watch, we have to adapt, we have to evolve. And because of that, because we have other choices, it forces us to also be as modern as possible, but in a thoughtful way. So I might have fears, but the pressure is brought down. The blood pressure is brought down because we have someone who's as gifted as Brian to keep our sanity. Yeah. Yeah. Question in the back?
So I'm curious, can you perhaps share some insight in the process on what's your rationale when it comes to deciding whether you sacrifice for certain features backwards or forwards compatibility, both at source and binary level? Like, for example, with Java 17, you started removing RMI, for example.
Yes.
So what's like?
Yeah. Backwards compatibility is. So let me make sure I understand the question. What is our approach to releasing new features that may not be backwards compatible, or the process for removing features? Okay, which is a very good question. Thank you. As anything, and I'm going to use an analogy from my father because he's a brilliant man. To make a tree grow stronger, you sometimes have to prune it. And just like a tree, every programming language needs thoughtful pruning because there's going to be features that were developed in the beginning that may no longer have the same level of purpose or functionality, or may not be used as much as it used to be because the environment continues to evolve and change. And so if we maintain something that is no longer providing value to the largest segment of our developer ecosystem, we then try to think about, is this something we just inherently keep and not touch, or is it time to remove? but we won't remove anything in anger. We have a process for that. So the first step is to notify the ecosystem that a specific feature is targeted for removal at a future date. So we have something called deprecation. And so you can use a tool like JDepreScan, that's a tool in OpenJDK, to then understand what are those features that are targeted for eventual removal. But we will never do that blindly without first letting the ecosystem know. Now, in terms of new features, breaking backwards compatibility, we want to do that as minimally as possible. At the end of the day, we want your workloads from Java 8, Java 9, Java 11 to inherently run on new versions. And so breaking backwards compatibility is something we take with the strictest of decision to try and minimize that as small as possible. It's not always going to be the case. And it's not just going to be the case with Java. Other languages are facing the same thing. And so I think we've done a pretty good job in terms of ensuring backwards compatibility stays mission critical. But there's always, and like I said, there's always going to be some corner case where that's just not possible. And again, we also want to prepare you for that. And that's why we have preview features. Sometimes we have incubator features or experimental features to let you know that that might possibly happen, but we will be fully transparent if that's the case. Now, I can't make the guarantee that will always be the case, that it won't break something, but we're trying to keep it down to as narrow a band as possible.
Interesting, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir. And I think that will probably be the last question, too. We have time for one
Okay,
more.
yes. Question is, you have basically like rather frequent releases and a lot of project and GEPs and how do you in the end decide actually, or who's deciding what goes actually into the release? Do you have like a voting, or is it like, I
it's
don't
easy.
know, like
If it meets our quality criteria, it goes in. So the way we start is once we start working on a specific feature, we look at what is the quality criteria to actually make it generally available. And if it meets that litmus test, it then gets targeted to a specific release. If it doesn't, then it misses that train, but then we know the next train is then only 6 months of the way. And then we look again, has the quality criteria been met for that specific feature? Now, who makes the decisions for which features to work on? It comes from first the input of the ecosystem. It also comes from us monitoring our overall environment and our customer base and all the various types of vertical applications that are out there. And we're also looking at all of the sort of new approaches of modern development. And so we have a pretty smart team of developers, but we also have a very smart, educated architect, Mark Reinhold, who will ultimately make the decision on let's start working on feature X, Y, or Z. So the input comes in, it goes through some sort of internal review on the Java team, and then we start put engineering resources against it based on Mark's architectural decisions. If it's language specific, then Brian gives us the input. Yes, sir.
Can I add to that question? Yeah, like
Sure.
the answer to another question, because is that, for example, like
Okay, so you say that Mark Reinhold decide about this, but as far as I understand, OpenJDK, anyone who is involved can create like the group.
You can.
And for example, okay, I want to work on the feature ABC.
So this
And
is where
it's popular enough that will be
yes.
implemented.
So can someone introduce a feature into Java? If you're willing to become an author and take all the steps necessary, you can sponsor a JSR and then work on it. Yes, but that has happened in very few instances because there are some licensing requirements required, and that is necessary to ensure the integrity and the quality of the platform. There are some companies, I'm not able to draw an example, but there are one or two features that are currently being actively worked on that are not originating from Oracle. I think one is from Azul.
There was like talk 2 days ago, like from university,
Yeah.
person from university that was related to AI. So that was one of JSRs.
Yes. You know which one I'm talking? Frank Greco, and Yep. And so if you go to OpenJDK and you look at the various projects, it immediately tells you when you click on the project who's the author, who are the sponsors, and who are the contributors. So you can immediately tell, is this project being inherently developed directly by an Oracle author or an external author?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes.
It was kind of like
Yeah.
I
So
was-
we have our own model in terms of what we choose to do, but if someone from outside of the Java team signs the contributory license agreement to contribute to Java, they are then able to do that as well. And we welcome that. It's rare, but we do welcome it. And with that, this is telling me that time is up. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your DevOps.